Hello and welcome to day 16, domain 2, task 2. This is managed communications. Let's jump straight into some content. Let's talk about questions. First question. You're a project manager. You're analyzing and combining the type and format of information with an analysis of the value of that information so that you can effectively and efficiently meet the information needs of your project stakeholders. This is an example of what? Is it sensitivity and confidentiality of the information, communication requirements analysis, stakeholder engagement assessment, communication modeling? Hit the pause button if you need more time. I will reveal the answer. 2 and 1. The answer to this is not A. It's not about the sensitivity and confidentiality of information. It's also not C, stakeholder engagement assessment. Neither is it D. Here's the logic. Each of those options is explained. The one that fits best is B, communication requirements analysis. It's a tool and technique of planned communications management. But beyond knowing it's a tool and technique, just understand what exactly you're doing. An analysis of the communication requirements, determining the information needs of stakeholders. It's quite straightforward. Next question. In the sample interactive communication model for a successful communications process, the receiver's feedback response is very important since the receiver is responsible for ensuring that the information is interpreted correctly while received. By getting the feedback response, the sender can confirm that the message is correctly interpreted on the other end. Which skill should one apply to ensure that the feedback can be achieved in communication between people? Is it A, nonverbal, B, networking, C, active listening, or D, cultural awareness? All right, let's reveal the answer. 3, 2, and 1. The answer to this is active listening. All the other options are different things. Nonverbal is all about body language. Networking is interactive communication and exchange of information with others to develop contacts. So if you take a look, active listening makes the most sense. Cultural awareness is understanding differences between individuals, groups, and organizations. So your best option is D. This is all very, very simple and basic stuff that I expect you to already know. And that concludes our review of these initial questions. Remember, at the end, I will have open-ended questions for you to take back as homework and solve. Let's jump into it.
Hello, my friends. How you doing? Welcome to 40 Days to PMP Exam Success. As usual, we are going to be covering one of the tasks from the 35. And today we're in the process domain, and our task is task 2. And task 2 simply states manage communications. Now, there's something about saying manage communications, especially to those of you who have read the 6th edition, and you know there is a specific process which is called manage communications. Well, let me make it very clear, this is beyond that singular process. In fact, I would title this task Project Communications Management in the world of Agile and Predictive, not to mention hybrid. That's what I would call it. The reason I'd call it that is there's a lot of information to take in this task. So what is communication? Communication is based on a model which has a sender sending a message through a medium to a receiver. It also involves the concept of communication blockers and overcoming those communication blockers and barriers in order to effectively communicate. And some of the blockers that we experience when communicating are things like noise itself, things like language, generational barriers, cultural barriers, and things such as that. PMI has quite a number of them mentioned in the PMBOK guide if you read the 6th edition, quite robust actually. So communications involves many things, but the PMI boil it down to 3 processes, which are plan communications management, manage communications, and monitor communications. Now, while these are quite robust in the 6th edition, you need to go to that next level and ask yourself, what does communications look like in the world of Agile? So you go to the Agile Practice Guide and you get familiar with how Agile teams communicate. And Agile teams don't have as much red tape. In fact, they have no red tape. What we have in the world of Agile is a team charter, which pretty much guides us when it comes to the aspect of communicating. And then we understand what the manifesto tells us about business people and developers working together daily. We understand the concept of team space, and we understand the concept that news must travel at a much faster rate, a more rapid rate than in the world of predictive. And the reason is we're doing things in very quick turnarounds. We need that feedback, and that needs to be put back in. All right, so I hope this gives you an idea of communications in general. You know, you also need to remember things like the information radiator in the world of Agile, things like osmotic communication, things like the fishbowl window concept and remote pairing. We've talked about these in the past, so I would recommend going for another read of these. Just search for them in the Agile Practice Guide. Now, in the task for today, we have some specific enablers, such as analyze communication needs of all stakeholders. You could say that maps back to plan communications management. That's when you analyze the needs of the stakeholders and you plan accordingly. We also have another enabler which reads, determine communication methods, models, channels, frequency, and level of detail for all stakeholders. So here we're looking at some more information as it pertains to stakeholder communication, going into a little bit more minutia. And the next enabler says, communicate project information and updates effectively. And that really maps back to your managed communications process, because that is where you are actually doing the communicating. See? And the final one simply states, confirm communication is understood and feedback is received. This is referring more to sender-receiver models, which we employ in monitor communications. In monitor communications, this is where you are checking to ensure that the plan worked and that your mode of communicating is sufficient. It's also where you ask, what do we need to improve on from a communication standpoint? See? And that's pretty much it. Now, there's various pieces in communication, such as the communications management plan, communication methods, communication models, communications requirements analysis, communication styles assessment, and things such as that. Lots of minutia when it comes to the actual tools of communicating. So I encourage anyone who is studying for this exam to really know the tools and the techniques of communicating very well, because the PMI is not going to say what is a tool and technique for managed communication. No, the question is going to take the concept and they are going to dress it up with a pretty little scenario and a bow around it. Okay, so learn about communication models, communication methods, communication requirements analysis, communication styles assessment. Understand how the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix comes into play. Understand what you do in the world of Agile. Communicating with the stakeholders, like I said, business people and developers, they got to work together daily, and therefore you're communicating daily. Understand that every event in the world of Agile is a communication opportunity. Every single one, whether it's sprint planning, sprint review, retrospective, refinement, right? They are all avenues for you to get good with your communications, right? Because you inspect, you adapt. If that didn't work, if something didn't work, you do something else. You try to get better and better, all right? That's what we call the TIA, the TIA factor of Agile, right? Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. You got to inspect, you got to adapt. All right, it's that simple. I hope this gave you some clarity, my friends. I look forward to seeing you the next episode. Look for the questions. And please remember to hit like and subscribe, and do share with your friends so that they know about this awesome free program for those of you getting ready for the exam. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
In closing, your questions for today are on the screen. Take some time out, understand all of this terminology. There are several questions in this day because you know the process domain is very heavy. It is important that you master all of these, get them down pat, and make sure you close any gaps found by opening up the PMP exam immersion book. I highly recommend this book because it has everything in one place. And while we covered a few questions today, there are a lot more questions in the immersion book across people, process, and business. If you want to be part of a course that goes into the details regarding this and on a regular basis has meetings outside of that bootcamp to keep you on the straight and narrow, you need to go on down to hpmexam.com. The value is tremendous. You're going to get the book, PMP Exam Immersion. You're going to get a half-day bootcamp. And after that course, on a regular cadence, you will be held accountable. You will be given extra content to help you narrow down any gaps. So I highly recommend going down to hpmexam.com for instruction and for support system. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.